Hi, welcome to Think Tech. We're raising public awareness about technology, energy, diversity, and globalism. This show is Center Stage. I am your host, Donna Blanchard, proud managing director of Kumu Kahua Theater, and we are coming to you live from Pioneer Plaza in the heart of downtown Honolulu, very near Kumu Kahua Theater. I want to let you know right away at the top of the show, if you would like to engage in the conversation, you can tweet us live at ThinkTechHI. And if you would ever like to join us in the downtown studio audience, you may do that. Just email Jay, that's J-A-Y, at thinktechhawaii.com, and he will hook you up. I am really pleased. I've waited about a year to make this interview happen. Today we're going to talk with a playwright and screenwriter who is a local girl who now lives in New York and is back with us because we're presenting one of her shows at Kumu Kahua Theater. Her name is Susan Soon He Stanton. Welcome, Susan.
Thanks, Donna. I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, I know the last time we did one of your shows, you were in town for the show, and it just didn't work out with me being able to get you in to talk to us. So I'm really glad that you're here now. We can have the conversation. The next time we do one of your shows, we'll do a follow-up then. We'll get it together for that. The show of yours that we're doing is called #IamBadAtThis, and it's exciting for Kumu on many different levels, I feel. I'll give you my take, and then we're going to delve deep over the next 45 minutes on it. But I think it's exciting because it does involve modern forms of communication so heavily. So it brings a reality to it. Anymore when I watch a show, people will try to modernize a show, but very often they'll leave out cell phones, and it's such a part of our lives right now that they didn't take the final step in modernizing. So maybe it's easier to start from scratch with the amount of technology that we have in our lives and that your characters have in their lives. So we're bringing that to the plate. It's done in a very innovative way. It's a wonderful comedy, yet it has poignancy to it, which I just adore when that happens. And it's also a lighthearted comedy coming in our season on the at the heels of. So we've had some pretty heavy shows this season, so it's nice to sort of open everything up and take a nice deep breath and see some people that I feel like I know the characters when I watch the show, even the more absurd, hilarious ones. I've met them. We've had them walk up to the box office window before at the theater. So if we could, let's start with, what is your elevator speech to people to describe this show?
Yeah, well, the play is really looking at how we live now. I think that there's a sense of how communities are built. We see a giant iPhone basically on stage, and we see the process of her, Emily, who's our main character, Googling and connecting. And so no person is ever in the same space in this play. Every single conversation happens between people in different spaces. And so we have our actress who's on stage basically in a bubble, and then we have an ensemble of 4 actors who play about 20 or 30 different roles, and they play characters of different genders and ethnicities and a wide range of ages and personalities. And really it's about that thing of what a village is now, especially in Hawaii. I think it makes a lot of sense where we know more people than ever. We're able to keep in touch with friends across the country and across the world, and we have thousands of friends and followers and on social media. But then what is the quality of those connections, and what actually nourishes us? Like, what do we need to actually feel fulfilled? And I think our basic needs haven't changed in certain ways. We still need that village. And so it's sort of looking at how it's built in a modern day and how it's the same.
Yeah. That's a nice elevator speech. That was good. And I feel like there are people who, I hear people of, unfortunately, my generation and older talk about how people just don't get face-to-face anymore. And I know several people who are not even on Facebook. And that is, I feel like they're really missing out. And there are so many people I'm connected to now. I'm connected to and active friends with people that I went to high school with that we probably didn't say more than 2 sentences to each other, throughout our high school careers. But now I see what's going on with their kids and their grandkids, and I really do care. This is a completely new form of communication, and the village but it exists. It is real.
Right.
It's not in lieu of everything
Right, and
else.
I feel like Facebook and Instagram, these different platforms, encourage a kind of intentional voyeurism in a way that you could know or not know how many people are viewing your photographs or whatnot, especially in a public profile. And I feel like the audience is that voyeur looking at this girl's life, you know. And I think there's a lot of characters. I mean, I don't think this is a play saying that social media is great or it's terrible. I mean, we have a 103-year-old man in this play. Bill Tapia is in the play as a character, and her parents are, and her father in this play is very is not tech savvy at all and has resistance to it. So it's about these different modes and different eases of which we live in this new modern world.
Yeah. Zuri just asked if you have someone who's literally 103. No.
No. That would be amazing.
Yeah. Did you set out to write a piece that tackles those questions about our communities now?
Yeah, so this is a play that was very much, I feel like, written for Kumu Kahua and inspired by it. And I had a talk with Harry Wong III, who was the director of the play, and we were talking, and he was like, I haven't read that many plays that are really about what's happening in the present moment and the way that we process things, and you know, millennials as being in the middle of their generation. And I mean, I feel he said it so well, but I started thinking about, like, what is a play about, what's happening right now, and how is this time different than any other time, and what's going on now. And I also, you know, I love local theater, I love local stories, and I've noticed there's a lot of things that talk about historical plays or things merging in hula and different forms, which I think is incredibly important. But I hadn't seen that many stories about, you know, like my experience, which is growing up in Honolulu, like not necessarily a plantation story or something really rural on a neighbor island, but like, what is it like to be from Hawaii but be like a city person and live here? And also there's this amazing art scene that's happening in downtown and like food trucks, and there's this very, I feel like, sophisticated, artistic, intellectual group of young people that's emerging right now and doing really great things. And I feel like that hasn't really been like looked at in theater that much, and so I'm trying to write something that represents that experience and those struggles, as well as, you know, the larger landscape of people in that world.
Yeah. Well, so your character goes to New York and comes back to Hawaii and is reacclimating herself.
Yeah, it's definitely a homecoming play, and it's about displacement. And I think it's certainly, I wouldn't say it's autobiographical, but it is personal. And there's that feeling that I always experience, which is in New York, I'm the Hawaii girl. And then back here, it's like, oh, you're the New York person. And there's just no quite perfect place where you vend and you feel like you belong anywhere. And yet you are, right? Like, she's someone that comes back home and is an outsider and feels strange, but it is her home, and she did grow up being here. And if this is her home, which is the exploration, then how does she find it, and what does it mean? And you know, also coming, I think there's a bit of like that. The play talks about this mainland superiority of you come back and you think you're so great and you're so above it all, and then realizing that things here are much more complicated and difficult and sophisticated and worthy than I think her original prejudice. And it's about opening up and being truly present here and making something and giving back to the community here in a real way that also nourishes her.
Yeah. Did you feel like when you were growing up here that you wanted to go elsewhere? You wanted to go to the big city?
I did. I think because for me, New York is theater, it's art, it's the place where I could do that. And I think that going away was, in a certain way, the best thing for me, because it made me realize how much I love Hawaii, and it allowed me to feel like Hawaii is a choice and it's a place where I have to be. And so I love working with Kumu. I love working with Honolulu Theater For Youth. I did a film with Henry and Cusack, and we were at HIF a couple years ago. And so for me, I try to come back and find reasons to come back at least twice a year if I can figure it out with the miles and everything, But telling local stories as a writer, because this place is so unique, it's really important for me to share those stories. And I love to share those stories here, but I try to also tell them in different places. Like, I brought Moses Goods and I worked on a show, and we were in Minneapolis, and there was a scene where his character and another actor's character were speaking in Pidgin the whole play. And there's, but the other characters are English, like very proper, kind of posh British accents. And there's a moment in the play where these two characters had an argument in Hawaiian, and it was very heated, and the other characters on stage didn't understand, and the audience didn't understand. But I was watching them perform this scene so beautifully, and I thought, this is the first time that this audience in Minnesota has heard an argument in Hawaiian. Live in front of them. And it felt really special to be able to share that story with them, with a different community, and have that kind of outreach.
Oh, that's awesome. Moses Goods is an incredible actor who is, and he has such a classic Hawaiian look about him, and he's been touring the mainland with, what's the name?
Duke Kahanamoku at the Duke,
Yeah, and taking our stories there. I grew up just outside of Chicago, and I knew so little about Hawaii. I was embarrassed to say it when I came here. I thought it was just another state. I'm no longer embarrassed about it. I just want to do something about it because our stories aren't out there. That's why I didn't know. I'm a well-heeled, educated woman, and I just didn't know because it wasn't on offer for me. So that's part. I love it that you're doing that.
Yeah, I think Hawaii in so many ways is one of the most unique places in the world, and a melting pot, and things that we all know here. But then it's telling those stories here and also telling those stories elsewhere is I think part of my mission in life, really.
Yeah. Oh, good. Awesome. I was just putting it into yet another grant proposal. It's important for us to tell our stories here. It's important for us to put those stories on stage so people can go and say, I recognize those people. I feel like I know those people. That's part of my story. Because you're not, when you're Hawaiian and part of many of the cultures here, you're just not going to see yourself accurately portrayed anywhere else.
Yeah, and I've done plays where the main character is Hapa or various things, and I've had kids or different audience members come up to me and say, I've never seen a play that had like a Hapa girl as the main character, or something where it's certain kinds of stories. I feel like, especially if you get that show to the right person at the right age, it's like, oh, I see myself on that stage for the first time, and it's such a good feeling. It's so rewarding to be able to tell that story and have actors come up and have roles that were written for those actors, to have that space for them.
That's awesome. Do you this show, I feel like this show could go anywhere and people could feel like they are introduced to these characters. The only problem that you run into is getting all of the dialects right, to really get that taste of it if you're going to use actors outside of people who live here.
Right. Hopefully, there are a lot of actors from Hawaii that go other places. So hopefully it's like, if you are from Hawaii and you're an actor living in LA or in New York, like finally knowing Pidgin will be an asset. And it depends where the show is done, right? I think that it has been a challenge where theaters are nervous about, finding roles for Pidgin actors. But I think because this play is about a relationship with a big city like New York and relationship with home, even though it's very specific, I think it is, very universal. It's like My Big Fat Greek Wedding back in the day. It was very specifically about this Greek family, but everybody could relate to these certain types of characters, like the mom, the dad, the various aspects. And I think that's the same for this play. I think that, when we first read it, a friend of mine cornered me afterwards, and she said, "Why did you write a play about me?" And I said, "I think I wrote a play about me, but also, various people have watched this play and said, like, this is so painful and funny, and it feels very, very much like my own experience." So I think I'm trying to capture all those very personal and vulnerable and like cringeworthy moments that we navigate emotionally, through romantic relationships and jobs and just, 1,000 little failures where you're trying to figure yourself out along the way.
Yeah. And it gives you permission to laugh at
definitely laughing at yourself along the way.
We're going to take our first break. We're going to pick up where we left off. Please stay with us. We're going to be back after just about 60 seconds.
Hi, I'm Chris Leatham here with Think Tech Hawaii, and I invite you to watch my show, The Economy and You, each Wednesday at 3 o'clock here in Hawaii on OC 16. We look forward to seeing you. Aloha.
Aloha, I'm Kaui Lucas, host of Hawaii is My Mainland, here on Think Tech Hawaii every Friday at 3 p.m. We address issues of importance for those of us who live here on the most isolated landmass on the planet. please come join me Fridays at 3 p.m. Mahalo.
Hi, I'm Kili'i Akina, president of the Grassroots Institute. I'd love you to join us every week, Mondays at 2 o'clock p.m. for E Hanakako. Let's work together. We report every week on the good things going on in our state, as well as the better things that can go on in the future. We have guests covering everything from the economy, the government, and society. See you Mondays on E Hanakako at 2 o'clock p.m. Until then, I'm Kili'i Akina. Aloha.
Hi, we're back on Center Stage on the Think Tech Hawaii Digital Network. I'm your host, Donna Blanchett, and we're talking with playwright and screenwriter Soon He Stanton. Her show, I Am Bad at This, will be playing at Kumu Kahua Theater through June 26, 2016. Just in case you're watching this in 10 years from now. It's very possible. Once it goes onto YouTube, it lives forever.
Forever.
So let's talk about, I'd like to talk about your, more of your background. Mm-hmm. So you grew up here, you knew you wanted to be a part of art, but you were involved in theater quite young, yeah? Can you tell us about that?
I mean, I think a lot of people start in theater either doing plays as an actor or doing tech. So I started as an actor and I was terrible, but I took this playwriting class with Dan Kellen and Honolulu Theater For Youth. And actually Dan is in my play, so it's kind of come full circle in a way. And this Theater Fest program, they had, you know, high school, junior high students write plays, and then they were developed and even produced. And so at a really early age, I had somebody that took me as a writer very seriously. And for some reason, it just clicked. You know, I think that I was lucky in the sense that what I wanted to do suddenly became clear. And the play that I wrote in Hawaii with HDY, I submitted it to college and got into NYU Tisch, and then suddenly at 17 I was in New York and terrified, but that was the choice. And I think that being a playwright and a screenwriter, you know, it's that kind of thing where like my mother, you know, it's like, oh, you know, there's that I think slight hope that you would have a more stable existence, you know, like
they worry.
But I think it's been exciting to create this career. There's no sort of like steps of what to do as a writer. You know, you try one thing, you try another. There's many different roads to succeeding as a writer, as a playwright. And I think I love telling stories, but I realized very early that I was not a novelist. I was not interested in that. I really like writing about people. I'm very interested in studying people. Like playwriting is the art of empathy. It's about understanding people. It's about bringing people to life. And I really like the collaborative aspect of theater and of film as well, of writing something that really smart actors will take and make, you know, emotionally true and find their way in and make discoveries that are different than mine and have directors and designers. I mean, all these different people make my blueprint three-dimensional. And it's so exciting, especially doing it in different cities. I've been working regionally a lot in the last year. This year I had a show, this spring actually, I had a show in New York, and then one in Seattle, and now one here. And so it's so great to be a part of these different communities and then, you know, share stories with them.
Yeah, and well, you're very good at it. How many of your plays has Kumu produced?
Kumu, so we did, the first one was Whatever Happened to John Boy Kihano, and that was very, very loosely inspired by the Peter Boy Kema story. And then we had Art of Preservation, which was a two-hander, and that was inspired by the Kauai Kaloko Dam flooding and the UH Library flooding. I put those two floods together into a romantic comedy, actually, strangely. And then the next was The Underneath, which we did last year. And so this is my fourth.
Your fourth one, then.
Right.
Yeah, so the first two, you were quite young when you...
Yeah, youngish. Right. Actually, the first play I ever had as a reading, so the play that I wrote at HGY that I mentioned, we had a reading of it at Kumu that Harry Wong directed, and that was the second play I ever wrote, and I think I was 16, and I was at Kumu, gosh. So it's a home for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that there is, you have wonderful education, and there are mechanics behind playwriting, but I'm here to tell you, I've been involved in the theater almost all of my life, and I took a playwriting class with Tammy Hailiopu Baker, who's a wonderful teacher, and I just couldn't do it. I sucked. It was horrible. It's not something that you are born into. You are born with a certain amount of talent, at least. You are given that, you, Susan, and you have done a lot to develop it very, very well. I hope I hope that you know, on this show, I always talk with artists about what they do and how they do it and why they do it. And I think a lot of people believe that there are certain forms of art that, oh yeah, I would do that if I had enough time, or if I wanted to do, I could do something like that. And people feel that way about acting all the time. And you can go very, very far on education and will and tenacity alone. But there is also some God-given ability that you got it or you don't. And also the tenacity that you have to say, no, Mom and Dad, I know you're concerned about me, but I feel this. I need I need to do it.
Right. I mean, I think similar to acting in certain ways, there is that thing of oh, I have this idea, I just have to write it. And I'm like, well, the just having to write it is actually like the entire process, and it's really hard. And the interesting thing is that anyone can write. You know what I mean? Like anyone can actually write, but like, how do you do it? How do you make it meaningful? How do you make the thing in your head feel the same on the page? And I think that people don't come up to brain surgeons or glass blowers or other kinds of artists and say like, oh, I could totally do that. But I think there's something with writing where it seems possible for, you know, and that's the real struggle is how do you build this thing out of nothing? How do you take this thing in your head? And it's certainly not easy, and it's constantly this journey of risk and failure, and the first draft is the worst thing you've ever read, and the second draft is slightly better than the worst thing you've ever read, and then you just keep doing it until you're like, I can almost stand this, and then you keep working at it until you're like, this is actually something that I want to say that I'm hopefully saying, you know, and it takes a lot of time and will, and just the ability for it to be bad for a while, I think.
Yeah, that hurts.
Yeah.
That hurts. Well, and not just to make this feel the way it does in my head. You're building these amazing characters. You're building characters that we actors love to read a script and go, oh my God, I want to play that. With, you know, there's something in it that speaks to you. But also, you build the characters, you build the story. This happens and then this happens, and within that story is irony and subtext and, you know, what we're not talking about, and there's an arc, and all of those things may seem to people very mechanical, but the way in which you carry us through that ride is pretty masterful, I think. So can we talk about how your day is structured on average?
I mean, I actually have some people I think like, you know, I sort of envy and hate these writers, but they're like, I get up at 5 a.m. and I have my tea and I take my child to school and then I write for 3 hours, and then, you know, I definitely have, every day is different. Sometimes I write in the morning, sometimes I write late at night, sometimes I don't write for 2 weeks and then I write for 4 days straight. And what I try to do is set a series of deadlines. So I'm constantly applying to various playwriting competitions, or I go on a writing retreat. And so I create these environments where I'm accountable. So I tell myself, I'm going to write a new play once a year, at least the rough draft of it. Every year I'm going to try to write a new play, and then how that comes about and the process of it. But I like to be researching a play, actively writing, and then sort of editing or trying to get a play produced. So that way you don't have, I think the first time I had a show, which was like Kumu, you know, all of my eggs were in that basket and everything I had was into the process of doing it, and the play ended and I was so sad. It was just, you know, it was that thing of like, you let it go, and theater's so ephemeral, it never exists again. And so I thought, okay, I have to always be not just sending off a play. Like, I'll be very sad when I leave this play, but I'll be at least thinking about the next play that I'm working on. Just that way there's always something looking forward to and looking back and then doing is the system I try to create. But sometimes there's just too many plays in my head. There's like a lot of people in my head sometimes for these plays. It's like talk to myself as I'm writing, and I seem really crazy at Starbucks, and that's all just, I guess, how it is for playwrights.
Awesome. Yeah, I interviewed Eric Yokomori, and he said he gathers characters until then he comes up with an environment to put them into, but it begins with his characters.
Interesting.
Yeah. Do you think of, I want to talk about these floods and tie this together?
Right.
What's your
I mean, I
process?
think that plays can be driven by different engines. So there's the engine of plot, where maybe you see like a film that's an action film, or it's very suspenseful, that's plot driven, or a character drama where it's kind of slower, like August Osage County, and you see people really talking, or Chekhov, and that's a development of character. Or maybe it's environment, where it's really about what happens in like the last days of this diner, or something like that. So there's different ways you can begin. So it sounds like Eric begins with character, and for me it changes every time. I mean, I was certainly struck by this article, but I was also thinking about a friend of mine who is from Kauai, and thinking about life in a small town and what it means to stay behind. And that's when I began writing that play. So usually it's maybe 2 or 3 things that kind of smash up against each other, and it's a couple different things, and then it starts to form. Sometimes I think I know the beginning, and then I know the ending, or I know the beginning and the middle. I never know all 3 parts. I feel like sometimes writers write an outline and they know what they're doing, and I'm constantly surprised in my plays. Sometimes a character will do something terrible or amazing, or and I'm like, oh my gosh, they just did that. And I mean, that sounds so strange, but
That's awesome.
but yeah, there's this so Aristotle, not to nerd out too much, but Aristotle says a character is destiny, and the characters qualities will lead them to these decisions. And so the more you know your characters, the more that in a way they can surprise you by following their different paths. Yeah.
Oh, that's very cool. And I like that you're kind of unstructured about it. I'm going to work this way this time, and I'm going to work at midnight. And I, as an artist, I'm just flummoxed by other artists who say, yes, I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and I do this, and I'm like, you're not a real artist if you do that. How can that be? Because it just doesn't resonate.
Terrible.
Yeah, it doesn't resonate with me. What resonates with me is being in the theater till 10 o'clock at night working on a grant proposal, because that's when I was inspired to do it. Yeah. Okay, we're going to go to our second break. We will be back in just a little while, and we're going to talk some more about the plays that Susan has put together thus far and where she's going in the future, as well as the performance at Kumu. We'll be right back.
Hello, I'm Crystal from Quack Talk. I've got a new show here. You've got to tune in. Check out my topics on sensitive, provocative female issues. So Tuesday mornings, 10 o'clock. Don't miss it. It's going to be fun and dangerous.
I'm Jay Fidel, and I'm the host of Research in Manoa, Mondays from 12 to 1 on thinktechhawaii.com. Take a look at us and learn about geophysics, learn about planetology, learn about the ocean and earth sciences at UH Manoa. You'll really enjoy it. So come around, we'll see you then.
Aloha and welcome to Think Tech Hawaii. I am Ina Chang. I am the guest host for Small Business Hawaii with Reg Baker. Tune in every Thursday at 2 p.m. and watch us. Aloha.
Aloha! Hello, my name is Patrick Bratton. I'm host of Global Connections here at Think Tech Hawaii. We broadcast live every Thursday at 1 p.m. We bring Hawaii to the world and the world to Hawaii, talking about international events and various things of interest to the audience. Please join me. I look forward to talking with you and having you get to meet some of my guests. Aloha.
Hi, I'm Donna Center Stage. Whoa, what just happened there? That was interesting. We're talking with Soon He Stanton, who's a playwright and a screenwriter, and we haven't even gotten into the screenwriting part yet. So if we could, let's get back into your world in New York. So you go to Tisch, and you are working on your bachelor's degree. You already have a couple of plays that have been produced under your belt.
Yeah.
And where did I read somewhere? One of your mentors was Paula Vogel.
Yes.
Yeah, you're working in a pretty cool world.
I've had a couple of really just amazing mentors, and actually some of them were people that I read when I was in high school, like writers that I love, that I never thought I'd be able to meet, and now they're people that I can call friends, and mentors, really just master teachers that I've been lucky enough to get to work with and know.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. That's amazing. So once you got into New York, how long was it before you were able to bring one of your pieces to the stage there?
Oh, a while. I mean, so I went to NYU, and then I was in London for a little bit, and then I did some development with a screenplay that ultimately never got made, and then I went to Yale School of Drama for grad school, and then when I came out, so I mean, it really, I had my my work at age 5 when I was very young, and then I didn't have a proper sort of New York like production until 2011 was when I had a real show in New York. I mean, I had some amazing shows at Yale. I had like 3 or 4 shows there. But in terms of an off-Broadway show, yeah, it took me a while. But it's expensive to do theater now, and not fringe. You know, it takes a while to convince somebody about your voice and taking a risk on it, because you write something and you think it's the greatest thing ever, but people have to program it, and if a theater's only doing 3 or 4 plays, then it is a considerable risk they're taking on you. And so sometimes it takes a while for them to just have the right thing that they're willing to take that risk on.
Yeah. So, and how did that happen? Were you working with a theater? Had you just submitted, or were you actually involved in the theater where you were initially produced?
I was in a developmental workshop, which is a great way for playwrights to get, their plays going. And then I had a public reading of the play with a different theater, Soho Rep, and that went really well. And then Club Thumb, which is a show the theater that produced my play, they saw the reading and they read the play and they liked it, and so then they decided to do it. And that was my first, the New York production.
Yeah. Oh, okay, cool. How do you... The world of playwriting and screenwriting, those worlds are very, very different.
Very different, yes.
Do you have, do you feel a natural affinity for one over the other, or are they just, I'm going to do, like I think I'm going to do a comedy here and maybe I'll do a musical there, and there are different parts of me that do that?
No, it's so different. I mean, I think because I've done theater longer and it's so tangible, I feel like I produced theater before, I've been a literary manager, so I sort of know what it entails to put on a play. And film is just this whole other beast, right? And it feels like it's all tech. It feels like everything happens in that moment, and you just pray to the heavens that everything goes okay and it's not going to rain when it should be sunny, or it's so expensive and it's just so scary. But what I love about film is that it continues. I mean, what I love about theater is that it's ephemeral, and what I love about film is that you keep it. But it's also just, film is about texture and telling a story visually and nuance. And so in a play, I would write a monologue about a man walking through a field of purple flowers and this realization he had, and he tells you. And then in a film, you would just see that man walking through, and you would show the actor thinking it and various shots of it, so maybe the audience comes to the realization about the mood of these thoughts, but you wouldn't have him just narrating it. And so it's a different form of storytelling. It's actually the opposite, because it is visual, and then you have to write a visual language instead of just writing dialogue. So for me it's a very different hat. TV is more similar to playwriting because there's so much more conversation than film, which is so visual.
Yeah. They're so very different. There's a lot of magic to what I see in a film. And when you are writing a screenplay, you have more latitude to say this shot happens and we see this and we see that. But you also have to come up with that in your head too, what you want that to look like, rather than collaborating with a director to bring that about. Have you ever thought about something else that you would do, like when your parents said, we really want you to have a good, lucrative career?
Right. I tried to be like the good Asian daughter, and but actually, I should say my father was a poet, and both of my parents were extremely, extremely supportive of my career and facilitated it. But I think I had to prove that I was serious about it. I think I had to prove that. I don't know if I've fully proven that I can make a good living at it, but I think I can prove that I'm in it for the long haul. And there's that. I mean, I feel like there's those quotes where George Clooney is like, if you have a backup plan, then you're not really like an actor, or some of those things. And I think that it can seem glib, and I think that everyone has their own journey. But it's true. I've never had a backup plan. I mean, I do love teaching, and and I was in book publishing for a minute, and there's different things that I've done that I've really enjoyed. But there was no really conscious, I'm gonna have this to fall back on. I've always been sort of wholeheartedly just pursuing it, and every year it's gotten a little bit better and a little bit easier, and sometimes I'll have a moment where I'm like, should I figure something else out? And then a door opens and I'm like, okay, I can keep trying and plodding along at being a writer,
Yeah. So you have had, you were in publishing for a little while. I'm always intrigued by why artists do what they do. And So often the answer, and maybe I'm always inadvertently trying to answer the question for myself because I could be making a lot more money somewhere else if I weren't, doing this. But I just have to. I feel like I just have to.
Yeah.
It's within me. Do you feel like you, with all these characters that are in your head, that it's developmental for you to work with them? Is that crazy? Does that sound
to work with
to work with the characters that to develop the characters that you put into your shows?
I think for me it takes a couple of different passes for the plays to become clear and for characters. So I think usually a really important step actually is hearing a reading of the play with actors. And there's certain actors that I trust and I use over and over and over again, and they help, they say like, I feel like this character wouldn't say this, and they live in the individual track of that particular character and they become a person. And then they ask me questions, they have thoughts about each individual characters. And I don't live in the head of that one character in the same way. So so I feel like in a certain way, and there's this quote that I love actually by Brian Dennehy, which is the first day of rehearsal, the playwright knows the play the best. The last day of rehearsal, the last day of tech, the director knows the play the best. And by the end of the show, at the close of the show, the actors know the show the best because they live in it and they embody it and they feel it and they have to, cry every night or go on this journey of the entire play every single night for the entire run. And by the end of it, they do know the world better than me. They feel it so much more. Even though I've been with it for a couple of years, writing and rewriting it, it's different to live inside of a play for an extended period of time.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And you develop relationships with the people not just the people on stage that you're chatting with in the dressing room, but your character.
Yes.
That relationship becomes more deep as you go. And there's just nothing else in the world like it, is there?
No, and I couldn't do, you talked about writing, I could not do what you do. I have so much respect for actors. It's the most terrifying thing. It's like my worst nightmare is having to get up on a stage.
Oh, we've got a nightmare photo out there right now. That's so cute. Kirsten and Sean, I love the way the show is presented with the 4 actors doing a radio play, basically, while our title role is she's living in a bubble. That's a very nice way to put it. And the radio play is so much fun to watch. It's a wonderful idea that's sort of a throwback that I think is going to appeal to audiences, maybe to older audiences. Yeah. And I think it's going to help educate a lot of people on both sides of the coin, really.
Yeah.
Oh my God, this never happens. I'm drawing a blank because I'm watching the pictures go by here. One thing that I think, thanks, Zuri. One thing that I think is the most important thing I think about theater is the conversations that it inspires moving forward when the curtain comes down, I like to say. What conversations have you already seen get inspired by this?
I think like I said, it makes people think about their own journeys. I think it's caused a lot of generational talk. I think millennials are a very controversial generation, and the idea, and it's not just about millennials, but how they exist in this world, how they process, and how they respond to older generations. There's her parents, and like I said, and somebody who was born, during World War I, basically. And so there's a look at just the way people communicate and how we process things and how we experience reality. I think it's really a show that looks at the way that we feel things, and also just a lot of very personal admissions. It's a very, very private look at somebody's life, and it's certainly comic, but it's also very painful. And I'm hoping that it'll be like, oh, I've done that. I've made that phone call in the middle of the night when I shouldn't have, or I've done that thing, or just to have that kind of openness of communication.
Yeah. I think those conversations will happen too.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen the way someone has cast your show and thought, oh God, no? You don't have to be specific about anything. But have you ever thought, no, that's not the character?
Right. I feel like it's interesting because every actor brings certain qualities. And I feel like let's say that there's 5 notes that any actor could hit, and maybe certain amazing actors hit every 5 notes, and some maybe hit 3 but perfectly, or 5 but lightly. And so you have to choose, and also there's different versions of people. So I've gone to auditions, and auditions are so interesting. And you could say like, okay, this version of this character is very funny, where this one skews more to the intellectual somber, and actually both are correct. And then it's sort of within the director's vision, what is the story we want to tell, and how flexible is this actor to get there. I think certain people maybe I've cast shows before by choice where the actor may not be the best fit for the role in terms of the way they look or certain things or the way their natural personality is, and then we find it. And then I've had other occasions where I've had actors, we chose somebody who was much greener, but that play really resonated with like who they were and what they were about, and it was very authentic. Mm-hmm. And then we had to bring out the theatricality, but we cast somebody that, you know, was more raw and untrained, but they sort of like were that person and knew that world. So it's always, I think, a conversation between the actor and a director to find the right thing. Yeah.
Well, and like it or not, usually directors don't have the opportunity to know the playwrights, or very often anyway. Oh. So the only a couple occasions before I came to Kumu had I worked with, as a director or an actor, had I had the opportunity to work alongside the playwright.
Right.
You know, if you're directing Cat on a Hot Tin Roof,
there
you are.
Yeah.
So if you're auditioning for me for Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, you are auditioning for not Tennessee Williams' interpretation of it, but my interpretation of the Tennessee Williams play.
Yeah.
So I would imagine a certain amount of you, to a certain extent, you have to sort of say, okay, this is where they're going with it, but also your directors have the luxury of being able to talk to you. And
yeah, I've heard that before, where not everyone's used to having the playwright in the room. And it's tricky because like our job can be done by dead people, right? Like it's like one of the few jobs where it's like, darn it, that's Shakespeare, you know. But yeah, I think it's very important for me to be there to see the world premiere of a show, to see the first even couple of productions, to be in the room, to collaborate, because I think that the play usually isn't finished and it has to be realized. You know, you can't understand your play until you see it on a stage with an audience. Like I've seen hashtag I'm bad at this on the stage with the actors at Tech, but you know, tomorrow will be the first time I'll know if these jokes work, if this play is effective. Are people leaning forward, or are they, you know, shifting in their seat? And then I'll know, okay, this scene needs to be cut down. I mean, those are things that I learn only by seeing it. And I do get sad when actors get nervous or director gets uncomfortable, because I feel like it's part of the new play process. It's part of, you know, Cat on a Hot Tin Roof is a masterpiece, and it's been developed and it's been done, but with a new play. And that's why I love Kumu so much, is because they take risks on new plays and they develop them and they let them, you know, playwrights cut their teeth on it and work on them. And you know, we've been doing readings of this play with Harry for almost a year now. You know, we've been developing it and growing the show. So.
Mm-hmm. And it will probably, it's gone through some you've made some changes during this rehearsal
even
process.
This week, I think even today, I've been, you know, these actors are amazing, and they, you know, it's a sense of a radio show. They make live sound on stage, they're running sound cues, they're running lights, they're running video. It's crazy, and I'm giving them new lines. Like today, there'll be some line changes, so it is, I mean, it's the world premiere, it's brand new.
Yeah, it's an exciting thing.
Yes,
and thank you very much for coming in to talk about it, coming in during this busy week as someone who is very involved in the process. I remember when we were getting ready to put the chairs up for the underneath, you and I up there sweeping, and I thought, man, there's no business like show business.
It's very glamorous.
Thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much for being here to watch us on Center Stage. There's a few other people I would like to thank. Our floor manager, Rich Prapus, who's right over there. Thank you, Rich. Zuri Bender, our studio overlord, who is in my ear. And I would also like to thank Jay Fidel, our producer, who somehow manages to put all of this together. Thank you for being here, and we will see you next week on Center Stage. Bye.